I'm Steve Wilkerson, and I'm with Jim Saunders, Executive Editor of the News Service of Florida. Jim, there's a word floating around the Capitol more and more frequently, gambling, and what will be done with gambling in the state of Florida during the 2014 session. Let's talk about the lay of the land in terms of policy issues relating to gambling. First, the legislature commissioned a $400,000 study of gambling in Florida, the economic impact of gambling in Florida. What's happened with that?
Well, the consultants were supposed to come back on October 1st with this study that everybody was putting a lot of stock in. Was going to run all sorts of scenarios for how to expand gambling, whether to expand gambling, what the economic impacts would be, what the tax impacts. But it's been sent back to them, and so they've got another month to work on it.
Did they not like the answers?
Well, it's a little bit hard to tell. The legislature says that it wasn't that there was just confusion. But it's the numbers are all over the place right now, and it's a little bit hard to tell where they're going and how to cut the numbers. But the legislature clearly is looking very heavily at gambling issues, and they think 2014 is the year when this is really going to come to a head.
Well, there are a whole bunch of issues when you talk about gambling. One term that I've heard by an advocate of more gambling in the state of Florida is that gambling has occurred in a creeping fashion. It really has not had any overriding rational planning to it, and that we really need to have in Florida a comprehensive plan for gambling. Are you hearing that?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's been sort of interesting to watch over the years because former Governor Bush and a lot of conservative legislators have always said, they don't want expanded gambling. But if you look around, there are, pari-mutuels all over that have been around forever, but they've been able to, in South Florida, they're able to have slot machines now. There's, all pari-mutuels pretty much have card rooms, which are apparently very profitable. The Seminole Indians have, very lucrative tribal casinos now. So there are all sorts of interests involved here in terms of trying to get the legislature to get their arms around this issue, and a lot of the interests are just fiercely competitive. So there's a lot of loose ends trying to figure out how you can keep people remotely happy, or come up with a deal that would keep people remotely happy.
And looming over all of this are these large destination resort casinos, particularly in the Miami area, and people are worried about that outside of the gambling industry, like resorts like Disney, for example.
Yeah, and 2 years ago there was a push to try to allow these resort casinos. There would be huge places in probably Miami, maybe Broward County. They would have convention centers. They would be very, entertainment venues and so on. So you've got people in the pari-mutuel industry worried about them as competition. You got the Seminole tribe worried about them as potential competition. And meanwhile, you've got Disney, which is very influential. The Orlando area, there's a lot of influential industries who do not want to see expanded gambling because they're afraid that money, instead of going into their parks, is going to be diverted to other adult entertainment venues. And so again, that's another cross current here. There's also just geographically, there's a lot of different issues going on. The pari-mutuel industries in South Florida have some interests. In Tampa Bay, they have some interest. In Jacksonville, they have some interest. So there's a lot of different interests at play here.
Currents.
Well, there's a ton of lobbyists at play here too.
I was about to say it's a great sort of environment for lobbyists.
Yeah, I think they're lining up pretty strong for the 2014 session. So they've got their rosters complete, I think. But,
Well, and another issue that's beginning to get some attention is Secretary of State Ken Detzner has been traveling across the state, meeting with local supervisors of elections, again, trying to purge voter rolls in terms of identifying ineligible voters. And Democrats are crying foul, saying that what he's really involved in is trying to purge or really suppress potential Democratic voters who are Hispanic. What are you hearing?
This became a huge issue before the 2012 elections. There were lawsuits, there were protests. Basically, the Governor Scott, as well as Secretary of State Detzner, started out on this process to try to rid the voting rolls of non-citizens. The problem was that the way they did it, they were using initially used driver's license records and so on. And the supervisors of elections cried foul because the data they were getting, they said, was not reliable. That the state was sending these lists of potential non-citizens voters to be removed from the voting rolls, and the data was bad. So Secretary of State Detzner has sort of rewound the tape, if you will. He's meeting with supervisors of elections. He says he's come up with a new process that's going to be far more deliberate and careful in terms of trying to identify those people on the voting rolls who shouldn't be. Part of the process involves using a federal database. It's called, the acronym is SAVE, S-A-V-E. It's part of the Department of Homeland Security, and they're hoping that will provide more reliable data than what they were trying to use last year.
Thank you, Jim. For more news about Florida politics and government, visit the Advances section of our website.